Hello and welcome to the Jumpstart Podcast with Jeffalytics. I'm your host, Jeff Sauer. Today, for our 52nd episode, I want to talk to you about the importance of customer service. And you'll be able to find this one and leave a comment at jeffalytics.com/customer service. Now, I'm coming to you from Old Town, Tallinn, Estonia, where I'm fighting off jet lag and getting settled before the Digital Elite Camp conference. Now, by the time you listen to this episode, the conference may have already started. This episode was recorded on a Wednesday, goes live on a Thursday, and my speech is on Friday, about 24 hours after this podcast goes live. And then hopefully I can relax a little bit for the first time in a few months. And speaking of that, it's been a pretty wild ride for the past few months, and I'm basically flying by the seat of my pants to stay on track until things hopefully will die down a little bit in July. Now, I'm not one to want to complain or whine about things, but it has been a pretty busy time, and that's all I'm going to say, because we're all busy and we don't need to say anything more than that. Now, one of the things that you can't stop when you're busy is customer service. No matter how busy or tired you may be, your customers want to be heard, and they have every right to be heard, of course. And I'm in the fortunate position that we've had now well over 5,000 people sign up for my online courses in the last year, probably more than that now that I think about it. And with that, even if 1% of them ask you a question every once in a while, that means that you have 50 support requests you have to handle. And so it's not something you can just do on your own or you can wing it. You really need to have some processes in place in order to handle customer support. And that's what I wanted to talk about in this episode. So what I've compiled for this Jeff-isode is just 10 thoughts on customer service. Number 1, get a help desk software. Now, no matter what size your business is, you should invest in a quality piece of help desk software to handle general requests that come in. Even if you're an agency and you want to handle inquiries that are coming in or whatever it is, just set up some kind of help desk software so you can keep track of everything that comes in, because your inbox and your help desk box should be two different things. You don't want to have to deal with customer support requests going to your personal email, because one, it creates yourself as a bottleneck where you're the only one who can respond to something, and two, you might miss other things that are coming in. So create some kind of support email address, even if you make it look like yourself. For example, I actually have something, jeff.sauer@jeffalytics.com, that really goes to customer support, but it makes it look like I was the one who sent it. And I don't regret that at all. It's been great. It's been a nice way to compile feedback while still making it look personal. Anyways, that all gets funneled into Help Scout, which is a help desk software that I use. It's like $20 a month for the basic features, which is really all that you need to get started. And I found that it's super, super awesome. And it really helps handle a lot of things. And actually what I've done is Help Scout is the way that we track things, and then I have it so that every time a new support ticket comes in, our Slack channel, our support Slack channel gets a notification, and then somebody on the team can take on that response and handle it. And then if there's problems, we just use Slack to say, okay, well, here's what I'm thinking on this support ticket, or here's what we need to do to get further along. So it works out really well. And I think whether your team's just one person, just you, or if you have a huge team, I would highly recommend thinking about help desk software in more ways than just supporting a product. Obviously, it's meant to support sales of products or products that need support, but it could happen to any business. Number 2 tip, divide and conquer. Now, a lot of business owners act like they're too good to do customer support. They're like, oh, that's a low-level function. We should start somebody off in support, and then maybe once they figure that out, they can do the other stuff. And I disagree. I actually really, really enjoy answering questions, and I think it's a great source of inspiration and ideas. While I don't think you should have to answer every single question every single time that something comes in, especially redundant questions, I think anybody, any business owner or product manager, whatever it is, should want to hear from their customers. So every time I see an inquiry or a new idea come through, I get inspired. And it tells you the good and the bad about your business. If you don't listen to customer support, if your team resolves every question without you providing any input or looking at it, then you're not really sure what the pulse of your business is. So you need to ask somebody how you're doing rather than just answering support tickets every once in a while. You can get an influx of ideas, and that's exactly what happens to me. Now, while I've been busy, I haven't been able to answer every single one, and actually the team is handling almost every single customer support request But I at least can comb through those when I have spare time and understand what's going on with the support aspect of the business. Number 3, establish rules for support. Now, this is a tough one for me because I have a team who answers customer support emails, and they did a great job even with me giving them zero training whatsoever. But there are some questions that kept on coming in, and it made me realize that there were no standard procedures whatsoever. And people could have answered it however they wanted to, and like I said, all the responses are solid and of high quality, but I realized that there's a need for rules. And so I needed to establish them because that's my role in the business. But I also hate to be too rigid because rigid kills great ideas. And also I think that rigid creates too slow of a response time and people wait up for a decision. I'll give you an example of a terrible customer service experience that I've had lately. That is WooCommerce. I upgraded WooCommerce, which is like the cart that I use for some of my sites, several of my sites, to the 3.0 version, and it broke PayPal. And I was like, damn, my people can't buy with PayPal, which is a pretty big deal because it's about 30 or 40% of purchases coming through PayPal. And so I emailed them and I said, hey, how do I get this to work? And they responded 2 weeks later, and they asked a basic question that really didn't even address the problem at all. And by 2 weeks later, I was already on to another problem, trying to fix things, and it's still broken. And then they send a follow-up like 3 days later, like, why haven't you responded to us yet? We're going to close this ticket. And it's like, holy shit, you spent 2 weeks giving me a response that wasn't even very good, and your response sucked. And then I told them that. I was like, hey, you guys suck. And they said, oh, we're sorry. We're really swamped right now since our 3.0 upgrade killed everything. And then I was just like, how much can I pay you to give me support when I need it? Because there's a lot at stake here. Your software is not very expensive, which is great. I like that it's not very expensive. I mean, I'm paying $500 a year maybe to operate this thing, but is there a tier I can use where I can just pay you to give me support so I can get it to work right away? And so that's an example that I think that's just a bad customer service, and that is not getting back to somebody and not doing basic triage or support for somebody when they need it. I think that's terrible. And I don't want that crap to happen with my business. So I wrote down a few words to describe how each communication that comes in should be handled. And those words and those phrases are, it has to be realistic, personal, pay attention to detail, kill with kindness, and when necessary, it should be hilarious. And so those rules may sound sort of funny, but I'm going to give you an explanation of those in our next several talking points. So that leads us to number 4. Be realistic in your response. What does your customer want from you? And what do you stand to lose if you can't resolve their problem? Now, there's some requests that come in from customers, and it's just asking too much. They're asking for something that you just can't possibly do, or it's beyond the scope of what you do. For example, my analytics course, at least once a week, I get somebody who says, hey, can you do the work of a consultant on my site? Can you tell me how to fix this specific problem for my specific platform? And it's like, okay, well, I want to make you happy, but that's not the point of the course. The point of the course is to get you certified and to understand where to look for things with AdWords. If you're not, you still need to figure out how to do and solve your problems. And the course, it solves the majority of them. It can't solve everyone. And just because I have a forum doesn't mean that I'm your tech support. And so I basically, in a nice way, and we'll talk about that with killing with kindness later. In a nice way, I say, here's some resources that will get you started. But if you have troubles with this, you might want to look at a consultant. And that's hard for me because you'd think that if the course was so great that every single person would know everything about Google Analytics. But I also, I'm realistic about that. They can't understand everything. And I also, if they push back, what I end up saying to them is that the whole point of the course is to tell you where to look and to tell you how to look at things, but I can't support every single system. I don't know how each e-commerce system interacts with Google Analytics. I don't know how all these things work. And so that's where we leave it, is like, hey, I can give you 90% of the answers that you need through this course just by watching the videos. That extra 10% may or may not get you there, and I'm willing to help you out, but it may be a consulting situation for you. So just be realistic in your response and protect both the company and the integrity with your customer. And I think there's a way to do both, even if you're not giving the customer the answer they're seeking. Number 5, all communication needs to be personal. There's too much generic bullshit out there. And I don't want my company to be the same, no matter who's responding. All communication should be personal. If it doesn't take a personal approach, then it's not worth sending the communication. And this goes for customer support, new customer prospecting, everything you put out there. So for example, I answer all the forum posts on my courses, which is 10 to 20 a week, which is a lot, with personal responses. And this goes a long way in customer satisfaction. And it also gives me the added bonus of helping me with 10 to 20 new ideas that I could potentially use for content or overcoming sales objections each time that I go in there and I answer questions, which is pretty awesome. And so I get lots of great voice of customer data, answering questions, potentially marketing activities from being personal with the communication. Now, I could be less personal and not respond and have it automated where if they ask a question about referral tracking or cross-domain tracking, we always send the one article, or we point them to another thread and say, hey, check out this thread, like you see in a lot of forums. But you know what, honestly, 10 to 20 a week, yes, it gets busy at times, but I'd much rather have those people be happy than just to be like everybody else, because being like everybody else is not going to push you through at this point in time. You really have to be different. And I think personal communication, it makes you very different. Same with number 6, attention to detail. If a customer writes something cryptic in their email, instead of asking them to repeat or, sending 10 questions to get at the root of the problem, before sending a single thing back to that customer, read their question again. Is there a clue in those crypts, in the crypticness of their message? A lot of times there is. Or what I'll do is I'll often, if I read through it 6 times and I don't get it, I will still try to see what their real question is. So the way that I'm understanding what you're saying here, I think your question is this. Is that true? And then I go a step further. I actually send them the response to that question I think they have. A lot of times it just answers the problem, and I've taken what normally would be 3 or 4 emails asking questions, and I've narrowed it down to 1. And that's a skill that's been developed over years. I had customer support jobs every single level of the way in my high school, college, and post-college career. So I got better at just being able to sniff out the answer. But I think that's how everybody should approach how they do things. And it's not, attention to detail is not just anticipating their answer, but it's also like before you send a response, read it yourself. In completion, did you misspell anything? Were you clear in what you responded? Did you solve the problem or at least make progress? And if you can't answer yes to all those questions, don't send anything until you can say yes. There's no reason to cut corners. Yes, some companies are busy. Some companies, have a lot going on, or we don't have enough customer support agents, or we get busy. We do a promotion. Like me, I had 3,000 people join my course in April alone, but they don't care that they're one of 3,000. They want the same attention. And so the only way you can really do that is if you pay attention to detail and don't cut corners with how you go about things. And if you have a business that comes in and you get a lot of customers and you can't handle the support, like WooCommerce, for example, then you screwed up. That means that you have a bad business model. Either you don't charge enough, or you roll it out to too many people at once. You didn't work out the kinks. You did everything wrong. And so in that case, I actually blame the business. There's a lot of places where I'm forgiving of a business because I know how hard it is to be in business or to develop software, but they could have solved that by simply paying attention to detail and giving out a slow release. WooCommerce, not to harp on them too much, but it's a pretty big deal for me because I probably lost thousands of dollars because of them. And maybe I still am losing thousands of dollars because of them. Man, that's freaking me out a little bit. But anyways, they are a big company. They're owned by Automatic, which is people who own WordPress.com, and they have hundreds of millions in funding, billions of dollars in valuation. Remote company, great place to work for, all that crap, and they still can't answer an email. And they still do a rollout of their 3.0 product, and it breaks everything. In fact, I didn't even know that 3.0 was going until my host, which is Pagely, which is the best WordPress host on the planet, hands down. Pagely sent an email saying, don't upgrade to WooCommerce. Pagely says, oh, we noticed that you have WooCommerce on your site, and they're asking you to upgrade. You should wait until at least version 3.04 because there's going to be a bunch of bugs. And so that was pretty nice. Now, the problem is I did wait until 3.04 to upgrade, or I got one of those little notification things where I see a notification on my screen, and I'm like, I'm gonna click on that thing just so that it's out of my way, which is like how I live my life, stupid notifications, just getting rid of them. Anyways, so I might have upgraded on one of my sites to 3.03 or 3.04, it still broke everything. So my host was right. They just should have said, don't ever trust them until there's another stable release, which is like 3.06 or 3.1 or something like that. And so that's generally, these are little things where I've upgraded software over the years so many times that I've been burned. Same with that host. They've seen that happen a lot too. They're proactive in their communication. They did everything right. And still, I ended up being frustrated because even with all those warnings, I still didn't get the result I was looking for. Anyways, I'm not sure if that rant's helpful for you or not. It might be a little bit too specific, but just think about it. Like if you're doing something and you know that you're going to be overwhelmed, or if you have a large customer base, roll it out slowly and be confident in what you're going to do before you push it out to the masses, especially on a platform like WordPress where it has if you have a lot of users, it can affect a lot of people in a short amount of time. Number 7, kill people with kindness. Now, every once in a while, you're going to come across difficult people. Or if you're in many businesses, you're going to say everybody's difficult. Every customer is difficult. I'm very fortunate that it's really just once in a while. And I also say that for sanity purposes. But I am very fortunate that I have way more satisfied customers than unsatisfied. I mean, it's 99 positive comments for every one negative one. So I don't let the negative ones get to me because it's not that many. But say that somebody does get mad. What do you do? I mean, I'm definitely somebody who, if every time I get a negative email, which doesn't, like I said, doesn't happen that often, but once or twice a week, and it can ruin my entire day because I'm sort of a competitive I'm sort of crazy like that. I get really fired up if I get negative feedback. And anyway, I get inspired / pissed off. And so whenever that happens, I always take a minute myself and I'm like, I'm so mad. I just want to respond to them and just say so many nasty things to them back and be like, blah, 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 you're the worst. And just really get to be, I go dark. I go deep and I go dark when somebody crosses me on there. But that's not how I represent it on the internet. It's totally different. What I do is I file it away. I just move the email, or I just get it out of my mind, get it out of my face, and don't even think about it. Although I still think about it, but I try not to actively look at it. And then I let it sit for like 24 hours or the appropriate amount of time, depending on whether, how busy I am and what's going on. It might be just later in the day. It could be just after playing Clash of Clans, whatever that ends up being. I just do something else, and then I come back to it, and sometimes I'm just, okay, this isn't that bad, or I've processed this and I'm over it. I go through my stages of grief. Sometimes I'm still pissed off, but every single time when I end up responding to that person, I kill them with kindness, because life's too short, and burning bridges never ever succeeds. No matter how petty it is, no matter how annoying this person is, it's never a good idea to burn bridges and to put out that reputation, because it makes you look so bad in the end. And so I always kill with kindness. There's an example of this. I think we might get into it in point number 9, but no matter how good or bad things go, always kill people with kindness, even if it's a negative review. Even looking at a negative review on your products, or if you look at the negative 1-star reviews on Amazon, or I've been looking at 1-star reviews on hotels.com as I was figuring out a place to stay in Estonia, in Tallinn. And I ended up using those negative reviews to understand whether I can put up with it or not. So there's one place where they had a negative review, and I read it and I was like, yep, I'm not staying there because that's a deal breaker for me. Sometimes I look at the negative reviews and it's just somebody's, oh, it was raining outside. Well, the place can't do much about it raining outside. So you got to be, you got to understand, or if they're complaining about winter, a lot of it is weather related or something that was out of the control of the place anyway. And so I say, can they control this, and can they fix it for my situation? And do I care? And so killing people with kindness in those situations, and even making, taking these negative things and just saying, hey, we're going to improve on that, it goes a long way. Number 8, be hilarious. This is when necessary. It's not always a good idea to be funny, but one of the things that I'm making a conscious effort to do in 2017 is to use my own humor in communications more. And I think this goes a long way with being personal, which is one of our previous points. There's just too much content in the marketplace, too many emails being passed around, Too many people BSing, too much seriousness in this world. I think being funny helps you stand out from being generic, makes you personal. I've noticed that even with this podcast. Every single time I do this, I try to inject my own personality. Inject is it's a different word, right? Because it's like I'm not forcing it. I'm just trying to act how I am, right? This is who I am. This is how I talk. I swear. And so I've been swearing in this podcast a little bit lately. And that's really, that's just who I am. And so I think that, in small doses, it can be effective. If it's all the time, people might tune out. And so I try to only use it when it has effect, and maybe a couple swear words in a podcast. But I think sometimes it's necessary. And sometimes people will laugh out loud. I don't think people are laughing out loud when you're being super generic or reading off of a script. And so I've been winging it and ad-libbing it. And I think a lot of you have been saying that you like this style for the podcast. And so think about that for yourself. Obviously, be aware of your situation and what you're doing, but being funny helps you stand out from being generic. Number 9, be flexible with your policies. Now, not every policy that you have is a good idea, or not every policy you have is going to be used the way that you think it is. So I offered a 30-day refund policy, or I offer it on my PPC and my analytics courses. And there's people who will sign up for the course, wait 29 days, download all the materials, and then ask me for a refund. And all right, I have a 30-day no questions asked policy, so I'll sometimes ask a question anyway. I'll just say, hey, can you tell me what you didn't like about it? And I always get a generic response, or something that's just like the knife in the back, like, oh, I didn't like your voice, or your face is stupid, even though I'm hardly on camera on these things. But basically, like, they just make it so back to point number 8, they like say something that just stabs me in the back and then twists the knife. And I'm like, man, this sucks. But then I'm like, you know what? I put the policy out there. That's how it is. Maybe it's not a good idea to have this policy. My CFO and wife doesn't think it's a good idea, but it gives people the assurance, and that's something that's out there. And so, yes, that policy is there, and I have to honor it. Now, I could decide not to offer the policy. It could lower conversion rate. It absolutely could lower conversion rate. I know that it does in many cases, but you have to weigh that out and understand the difference between doing these things. And there's other policies, like when I did the promotion with AppSumo, they gave 60 days by default to redeem the coupon. Now, the first time I did it, I gave 60 days, and people on the 61st day were like, hey, my coupon doesn't work. How do I get this to work? And I got customer support requests, and I was like, okay, well, it's a certain time of year. I'm just going to extend everything another 60 days and just not even worry about it. So if a customer service request comes in, or actually it was going to me personally, which is a pain in the ass, see point number 1, I'm going to just extend it for them, no questions asked. And it was annoying, but I did it because they, even though they didn't follow the rules, what was it worth to me to do that? And then people kept on, I was like, 60 days will all be done. Then 60 days after that, they're still giving me these requests, and I'm still honoring them. And then eventually, I think 6 months after the promotion went, I decided that I wasn't going to redeem coupons anymore. It was a new year. It was like 2017, and people were still asking for it. I was like, hey, man, you had way too much time. I'm not going to do this. And guess what? People complained. People were so mad. They're like, oh, you're stealing from me, basically. They're acting like I'm this unscrupulous person who took their money. You take my money. And it's not even that much money. Let's just be clear about that. You've taken my money. What are you doing to me? And it's like 6 months after another third-party company took your money, and you had very clear instructions to redeem this, and you didn't do it, and now you're acting up. And so then you have this thing like, okay, well, is my policy of drawing a hard line worth it? I'm getting into fights with people, and I'm not like, whatever, they already did pay. And so do you just let them redeem? And so I eventually just said, okay, well, this one guy complained. He gave a 1-star review. He was trying to make my life miserable. He was basically downvoting all the positive reviews, just internet trolling me because I didn't redeem his coupon. And then I responded, and I killed him with kindness. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry you didn't redeem it. I explained exactly what I'm talking about here. I've redeemed it for everybody. Now we're going to have a new policy where we're going to redeem it. And this guy was still really mad, but everybody else saw that response, and they're like, oh, this is reasonable. This isn't, this one negative review is about something that the person didn't fulfill in what they were doing. So it actually turned into a nice positive in doing that. But it also reminded me that I should be flexible with policies if I don't suffer from it. Why would I deny somebody of being able to learn even if they didn't follow the policy? And so that's tough for me because I honestly think nobody should have the expectation that if you don't follow the rules that you should just magically get an exception. But also, I don't mind giving an exception in this case because the whole point is this person wants to learn from me. And so it's a fine line, and you have to be flexible with your policies. And that's what I've been doing as I have gotten to be a little bit more flexible with the way that I do things. And that brings me to my last point. Be honest. I get a lot of pre-sales messages asking me if there are specific features in my products or if I've addressed something very specific. Like, for example, my Google Analytics course, I get a lot of questions like, hey, can you tell me how to do auto event tracking in the new interface of Google Tag Manager? Is that going to be covered in this course? I'm like, no, it's not. Yes, I could talk about it. We could do a forum post about it. We could do some kind of, I can send you some resources on it, but my course is getting you Google Analytics certified. Like, what do you expect for Tag Manager? So you can either do a different course or, I can work with you on it or something like that. But no, we don't address that. And so if you're looking for Google Tag Manager, my response will often be, hey, we have one video or two videos that mention it. I think it's very important, but this is not the point of this course. We could eventually cover it, whatever, but that's just what it is. Or some people will be like, hey, if I take this course, what can I get out of it? Can I make millions? What value am I going to get? And most of the time, I just tell them honestly, like, this is not going to fulfill what you're looking for. What you're seeking, these are not the droids you're looking for. This is not what's going to end up happening with the product. And I would encourage you to not buy it because I don't think that it fits your needs based on what you're telling me. I tell them that I stand by my product, but it wasn't designed to solve that one specific need. And there are probably better materials out there for fixing or getting your one need out there. And what's funny is that these people, they end up purchasing my product nearly every time. Now, why is that? It's because it's a personal response. I pay attention to detail. I'm realistic with them, and I kill them with kindness. Isn't that funny? Like, the whole principles, there's a method to that madness. Those are the things that I think are really important for customer service. Now, these are there might be more things that I'm missing out on, but I think that I've covered in those 5 ideas how I've always approached customer service. And I'll have to say that customer service-wise, I'm on point. I handle customer service extremely well. It's probably one of the strongest things in my entire business and my organization because I did it for 15 years. I did it for my entire life, and I've had to deal with things, and I hate ambiguous response, and I hate bullshit. I hate people that just mail it in with their responses, and so I decided I don't want to do that. And so those are the things that I do for customer service. And it turns out that if you have these policies in place and you have a solid product, people are going to gain more confidence with you over time. It's pretty great, isn't it? So those are the top 10 points, but I wanted to offer you a bonus point as well, and that's number 11. You should use these insights to fuel your marketing campaigns. Customer support responses are an amazing way to understand what your prospective customers need or your existing customers. You can use those responses to create better marketing messages. You can use feature requests to create better products. You can understand the voice of the customer because they're speaking the language of your future customers. There's so much value that can be had from being in the trenches of customer support. Not every single response is going to be valuable or the best use of your time, but there's a lot of value in addressing this and making sure that your organization turns what many people view as a negative or necessary evil of customer support or help desk. I would say that WooCommerce probably considers it a necessary evil or even an evil since they're so terrible at it. But those who do it well, they're the ones who end up getting the lifetime customers. They're the ones who end up getting people interested in working with them well into the future. And that's the approach that I took. And hopefully it's an approach you can take as well. And so that's it for this week's episode. If you like what you heard here, leave a comment at jeffalytics.com/customer service. Talk to you next week.